The sun was an unforgiving ball of fire beating down on the Kalahari when Dr. Kevin Richardson, a wildlife veterinarian, and his guide to Boga Mole made the discovery that would alter their lives, always. They were on an anti-poaching patrol deep in remote Botswana when Taboga called out, voice tight with disbelief. There, by a dried-up watering hole, lay the skeletal remains of a lion that had once roamed Africa's plains with regal confidence. Whoa. The animal's breathing was a faint whispers against the scorching heat, ribs jutting through its dull, matted coat, its powerful frame wasted to mere skin and bones. At first glance, Richardson thought it was dead. Kneeling beside the lion, he braced himself for a final, hopeless exam. Parched gums chalk white, body temperature suspiciously low in spite of the desert heat. Shades of dehydration marked the creature's sunken eyes and tangled mane. Open sores ran across its flanks, likely from days spent lying unmoving on the hot, hard earth. Its hind legs were stiff and lifeless, probably paralyzed, explaining why it hadn't hunted or reached water. Standard protocol screamed euthanasia, but something about this lion, somewhere in those half-closed eyes, told Richardson he wasn't quite gone. He leaned closer, preparing for snarls or growls. Anything but what came next. The lion wrestled its head toward him, lifting it with agonizing effort, eyes locking onto Richardson's. It wasn't a wild predator's glare, but a pleading gaze that seemed to speak a please. Help me! Help me! After 30 years in wildlife conservation, Richardson had never witnessed such an expression in a lion. It was as if the animal, an adult male approaching 8 years old, understood that help had finally arrived. Being moved by a silent magnetism, Richardson made a decision that would rewrite the rules of field veterinary work. Rather than administering the last injection, he opted to attempt a field rescue. As daylight dimmed, he laid out an emergency plan. Establish and 4-line for fluid resuscitation. Draw up pain medications, antibiotics, and electrolyte solutions. To the astonishment of his assistant, the lion remained completely still. No roars, no thrashing, only those imploring eyes. Richardson prodded carefully, inserting the IV catheter. The lion's muscles went slack, trusting the veterinarian as if it knew he was there to give life. While Richardson infused life-giving fluids into the ragged beast, his radio crackled with a request for a helicopter from Mail, over 200 miles distant. Night fell swiftly in the Kalahari, dropping temperatures from scorching to bone-chilling within hours. Under a sky bright with stars, Richardson wrapped the lion in thermal blankets scavenged from his vehicle. He positioned himself as a human windbreak, shielding the creature from the cold desert wind. Every time he checked the 5-4 or tugged at the blankets, the lion responded with soft, grateful grunts, more reminiscent of a contented house cat than an apex predator. Richardson later said it felt surreal. Here was a dying lion, alone and weakened in the desert, placing complete trust in a stranger. At dawn, under a sky still bruised with last night's darkness, the helicopter arrived. Richardson sedated the lion just enough to keep him calm during the flight, all while ensuring the fluids continued. Arrival at Mount Animal Hospital brought a flurry of whispers. Dr. Sarah Tilheigel, the head veterinarian, doubted they could save a wild lion this malnourished. Even if he survives, she argued over the radio, his paralysis makes him unreleasable. But as she laid eyes on the lion, now lying peacefully, vital signs tentatively stabilizing, her medical instincts spiked. There were no roars or snarls in the bright hospital bay. Instead, when surrounded by masked veterinarians, the lion accepted an oxygen mask, staying calm as though he knew they meant him no harm. Diagnostic tests painted a grim picture. A severe spinal injury, likely from a fall or confrontation with another lion, had left his hindquarters paralyzed. Weeks without hunting or water had triggered extreme malnutrition and multi-organ stress. Doctors estimated his chances under 10%. Still, the lion's eyes followed Richardson's every move, as though searching for the hand that had first eased his pain. An 8-hour surgery ensued, attempting to correct the spinal damage. Richardson did not leave the operating room. Whoa! Even under anesthesia, when monitors beeped and machines hummed, it seemed the lion's unconscious mind sought out the familiar presence of the man who had chosen rescue over surrender. Post-surgery, the lion, named Tao, after the ancient Egyptian word for lion, was anything but a routine case. routine case. His body needed constant monitoring, and his spirit needed companionship. Richardson set up a cot in the sterile recovery room and committed to sleeping beside Tao for 3 weeks. During this time, nurses witnessed a bond that defied logic. Whenever Richardson stepped away, Tao's side of the enclosure fell silent with distress. When his vet returned, Tao would emit soft, chuffing sounds and attempt to nuzzle Richardson's hand as though a child greeting a beloved parent. Nurse Jennifer Mormey, watching this unfold, remarked that it felt more like a family reunion than a veterinary ward. As physical therapy commenced, Tao surprised everyone again. He endured painful exercises meant to rebuild muscle in his paralyzed legs and seemed to understand that the discomfort would help him walk again. In the 4th week, just as hope teetered between joy and despair, Tao lifted his tail and flexed his back paws. The spinal injury was visibly healing. Doctors called it medically inexplicable, given the usual permanence of such trauma. Videos of Tao's first wobbly steps, supported by Richardson's steadying hands, circulated on social media and racked up millions of views. Viewers around the world wept alongside the tiny tremors in Tao's body, and donations poured in to fund the lion's continuing care. 6 months post-rescue, Tao had transformed from a near-skeletal wreck into a robust adult male lion, walking, running, and roaring with the strength of a healthy wild creature. To ensure his safety, since he could never be safely reintroduced to the wild, Richardson and colleagues built a specialized enclosure at the research facility. Their plan was to give Tao a dignified retirement, shelter, steady food, and veterinary oversight. But on a warm October morning, Tao had a different idea. Richardson, arriving for their routine check-in, noticed Tao eyeing him intently. Without warning, the lion approached slowly and, with remarkable gentleness, took Richardson's wrist between massive jaws, not to bite, but to guide. Tao led him across the enclosure toward the gate. Richardson, heart pounding, felt a message clear as any human plea. A trust me, against every protocol, he opened the gate. Cameras panned in disbelief as Tao, flanked by his human companion, strode calmly out of the compound and into the wild bush beyond. Their 2-mile walk threaded through thorny brush and parched earth, news helicopters hovering overhead as millions watched live. When they reached a small pride of 3 lionesses with cubs, Richardson recognized them as the same family he had monitored during anti-poaching patrols. The very pride whose only watering hole had dried up months earlier. Tao positioned himself protectively between the lionesses and Richardson, vocalizing softly in a language only lions truly understand. The lionesses did not flee. They did not growl. They remained serene, allowing Richardson within reach of their cubs. Muffa. In that moment, a message crystallized. Tao had summoned aid not just for himself, but for his family. Richardson acted swiftly. He coordinated with local conservation authorities to establish a water station and feeding program, ensuring the pride survived the relentless drought. Throughout, Tao stayed by Richardson's side, a living bridge between human compassion and wild pride. Footage of this extraordinary scene, of a lion leading a man to save its family, became the most watched wildlife video in internet history. Dr. Jane Goodall praised it as the most extraordinary display of cross-species cooperation ever documented. Eventually, for Tao's safety, Richardson guided him back to the facility. Their unbreakable bond remained, and Tao spent 7 more years as an ambassador for lion conservation, raising millions for wildlife protection. In 2019, Tao passed away peacefully, Richardson holding him as he once held Tao's frail body under Botswana's scorching sun. At Tao's memorial service, Richardson reflected on the lessons learned. He didn't just survive, Richardson said, voice thick with emotion. He chose to use his second chance to help others. In doing so, Tao taught the world that the line between human and animal consciousness is far thinner than we ever imagined.